Welcome home, Beckman family. This is home where faith and family meets. My name is Father Tim Donovan. I'm parochial vicar at St. Bonaventure in Huntington Beach. And this is Pam Hurwitz, my co-host. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
We are at Pam's house again. The last couple ones we've been recording here. I love recording here. It feels so homey and welcoming. And we have our Christmas tree up here with beautiful decorations as we're entering now the Christmas season, right?
Officially.
It's a season. Some people forget that it's not just a day, you know?
Yes,
but we got a whole season all the way up till the baptism of the Lord. So welcome. We're so happy you're able to carve out a little piece of time today to be with us.
Yeah,
Thank
of course.
you. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome. We invite you to just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your little family here and maybe your beauty of this first Christmas together.
Yeah. Okay, I'm Emily.
And I'm Patrick. And here we have our 5.5-month-old daughter, Claire. Claire Kathleen.
Oh.
Yeah.
She was born on July 3rd. And yeah, it's definitely given a new meaning to Christmas for us, kind of watching it all through her eyes.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And being with baby at Christmas too. You know, I remember last year was my first year as a priest, so I was baby priest during Christmas. my first Christmas as a priest. And I also asked if there was any other first Christmas people out there, you know, and so a couple babies were held up. And it was just it was very precious. Yeah, just to kind of have that. And it's fresh and it's beautiful and there's a certain sweetness to that and to cherish that, you know. As Pam says, they always grow up way too fast, right?
Yeah, way
Definitely.
too fast. Way too fast.
Definitely reminds you of the true meaning of Christmas.
Right. And welcoming the simplicity and the purity and all that, you know. It still blows my mind that God himself would become a baby.
Right.
Like it's such a vulnerable position, right?
Dirty diapers and all.
I know. Can you imagine?
No.
The God of the universe would let his diaper be changed, you know?
Yeah.
Or they would have to wear diapers. That would be interesting. I'm not sure how that all went down.
Yeah.
During Jesus,
Back
Yeah.
Could have been even messier. Okay.
For sure. That's a really good question. Something I haven't done some serious reflection on before.
Yeah.
But awesome. Do you have any awesome plans for Christmas with any families going on?
We get to be with both of them, so that's very special. We'll be with one side on Christmas Eve and then here in Chino Hills, and then we'll fly up to Washington on Christmas Day and get to be in Washington for about a week and a half. And I'm hoping for her first snow, so that would be fun.
Oh, yeah. Everybody has to be with the baby, you know? I mean, all of a sudden, I mean, they wanted you to, but like,
we have recognized that we come second now, you know. We are just the carriers of the baby.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. As you walk into people's house, they don't hug you, they just reach for her.
Yep.
Where's that baby at? That's what mom would say. So it's kind of like hungry for it. You know? Give me that baby.
Yeah. And she's the first grandchild on both of our families, so she gets tons and tons of attention and affection.
She is the first on both.
is, yeah.
Oh, the princess.
Yes.
It's over, Claire. You're going to be.
We're trying to keep the spoiling to a minimum.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
But grandparents, they just want to give and give and give, which is great. Got to curb it a little
such
bit.
A focus, right?
Yeah.
The one going on, you know. And that's how Jesus was too. Just with him, you know. She's probably the first one. Man, I don't know. We'll see. Definitely Mary's. So
Yeah.
Anna and Joachim spoiled them. Hopefully they were still alive during that moment. It was a beautiful thing. Cool. This Sunday we have a beautiful feast. One of my favorite feasts of the year. I'd probably call it even my own patronal feast, and I love for families. But it's the feast of the Holy Family, and sometimes we don't get to celebrate it on Sunday, so it's a treat when we do get to reflect on it together as a whole church, and the beauty of the Holy Family, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. I think sometimes the challenge, though, is that like we can think that there's just one Holy Family, right? It's like they are the Holy Family, and since two of them were without sin their whole lives, you know, it must have been fairly easy. And Joseph was always just blamed for everything, right?
Yeah,
You know?
that's what I always say. I say, if something went wrong, like there were two heads turning at the third one, like, what did you do this time?
Right, you know, so it's kind of like, oh, well, if that's the criteria for holiness, then oh my gosh, there's only one Holy Family ever, you know, in the context of the world. But I don't think that's like the Christian way to look at it, the Catholic way to look at the Holy Family. They're not just examples for us, but they're also advocates for us, and the possibility that holiness is a call to all of us, and to be a holy family yourselves, and to to live in the midst of that. And I think sometimes we think that holiness means being perfect.
Right.
And as you know, your lives aren't perfect, and,
Right.
and things go, and we
Definitely
make
not.
mistakes, and we transgress against each other, and all that kind of stuff. But I think even in the scriptures today, we see that holiness is not about being perfect. It's not about ever causing, anguish in each other's hearts, but it's about, I think it's about this commitment to always growing closer to God with each other, Even Jesus, when he got lost in the gospel and, lost in the temple, and he was there, it caused his mother and father much distress, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Going to find him again. And then that reconciliation, though, was able to, I really think, strengthen what they had and the confidence they had in each other. So I know. And just share with us a little bit about your experience of being a little family in the last few months. And
Yeah.
really became family at your marriage, though, not just when you had a child. And maybe then some of the challenges to holiness, but also some of the ways that you've seen really kind of God break through.
Yeah. I think, we have thoroughly enjoyed the last 5.5 months. Lots of challenges, tiredness, sleep deprived. I think that's the number one thing that kind of makes it difficult, because it's not just being tired, then that affects just our interactions with each other, our patience, but there's so much joy in every little thing, every new thing that she does, or seeing how she responds to Emily or to myself. It's a lot more fun than I thought. I've always wanted kids, and I've loved them, and I've been baby crazy even before we were married. But I think just the sheer joy at all of the new exciting things she does, I didn't quite anticipate that. I anticipated all the bad things, but just I knew I would be excited, but just it's a whole other level than I guess what I anticipated, at least.
It's so, I'm just really, as you're talking, I'm just looking at you, Emily, and just having the image of Mary holding baby Jesus, because you have just a really sweet, I don't know, she just looks, you're picturing Mary to look like you, or you to look like Mary. And just as you're holding the baby, just, there is just that sacred. And and what you were just saying too, when you watch Emily or watch her look at Emily and get to share in that piece also, that we get to see different pieces of each other as we kind of raise this little one as well, but which is fun.
Yeah.
But just so beautiful at this time, right as Christmas. We were caroling last night, and we were singing Silent Night, and we went to someone's house who had a very young baby too. And as we're, the round young virgin mother and child, and just, again, I was weeping. I mean, I'm like going, are you kidding, Pam? I mean, but like, there's just nothing more beautiful, I don't think, than a mother with child during Christmas. So like
it's funny you say that, because both this Christmas and last Christmas, I've definitely felt kind of a stronger connection, or a renewed connection to Mary. And especially last Christmas, we knew we were expecting Claire.
Yeah.
And so kind of that reflection on, gosh, what it must have been like for Mary knowing she was expecting Jesus. And then now this year with her joining us, and like you were saying, same thing, like really trying to turn to Mary and emulate Mary in those tough moments for sure. And in the joyful moments.
Yes.
Of the Christmas season, definitely.
And I can say for certain, in the middle of the night when Claire wakes up and is screaming and is hungry, I would say Emily is a lot closer to Mary in disposition than I am.
I don't do well with middle of the night either as a father. I'm like, really? Is the phone really ringing out?
But in the gospel too, and you haven't had that piece yet, but it's coming, okay? But is that, where they lost Jesus, and I had a moment in my parenting where I Jillian was at TJ Maxx and not the Temple. Okay. And
For some, I guess. Maybe.
yes, exactly. And somehow she had hid in the clothing racks or whatever, and in that 5 or so minutes, when I could not find her, it was just just like an out of body experience, almost So I think, those of us who are parents, especially, that, I think, what is it? They go home and they try to see if he's at home or whatever first. And then does it say they came back 3 days late? Is it 3 days later?
Well, they were in a caravan at that time,
Okay.
and that was kind of the expectation, was that the women kind of traveled together, the men did, and then the children. They were kind of, so he was expected to be among the children, but they found out when they got home that he wasn't.
Okay.
And then they had to go all the way back, to find him. And
So just the sheer, and then I just think their humanity so showing in that, when they see, we were so anxious, we were so worried about you,
Right.
and there's just a beauty to that parental love. There is a beauty, even if, it's just so different, even if he came home late, Patrick, or just something about that you've been entrusted, with this, and all that joy and all that you're already starting, that love that's being built up, that now, becomes a part of how you interact. And
Right.
yeah. Don't go to TJ Maxx.
That's the whole story.
he plays with his clothing racks. Right? We used to hide from my mom. It was probably not a good thing. Hide in the middle of all the racks. I think it was what was that place called? I think it was before it was Costco. It was something else, Price Club or something. Do you remember that?
Yes.
I remember that just came back to me right now.
Yeah.
Whoa, it's there somewhere in there, huh?
No, and that's why even too, when I'm driving down the freeway and I see the Amber Alerts or those things, I just think every mom, I'm just immediately praying for, that just person
so
who's
true.
out of their mind,
Right.
Awful thing to, scary
To
thing.
imagine, yeah.
But it also shows the depth, I think, of the connection and the love as well.
Yes.
Like when we lose something we don't care about, it's like, man,
Yeah.
darn, misplaced that, I can replace it. But the child, that's not our approach to that, and it really
Right.
does reveal, I think, in the hearts of us, and especially mothers, just kind of whoa, no, this is part of me,
Yeah.
this thing is so valuable and so important. This person, this little person.
Yeah. Well, and I think in our marriage too, the fact that she's a little piece of both of us and she's our love, joined in human form, that's such a miraculous thing. And so, of course, it just, it gives it that irreplaceable feeling, or that such worth there,
Yeah.
I think God said something really profound when he became a baby. Because God could have become a man in any way, shape, or form he wanted to. He's God, right? Do whatever he wants. He could have just appeared 2 weeks later, died on the cross, finished it off, went back,
Right.
Could have done that.
Yeah.
But didn't, right? He was very intentional. No, I want to enter the world as a baby.
Right.
And I want to experience all of what it means to be human, to show my people that I'm with them in all of what it means to be human as well.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think because we would miss him in moments like this too, maybe,
Yes.
Yes.
that he's like, no,
Yes.
I'm here. And then I think further than that is that God is proving to us that he wants to be found in the context of our families.
Yeah.
And he wants to be born into our families again each and every time. And I think through the gift of new life, we see that very powerfully. Whoa, God, no, you're here.
Right.
That you're co-creators with him too, and that his presence is manifest in the context of your family. I think that's super important to be reminded of too. Family's not just about what we do, but that God is present in the midst of all that and revealing himself in the midst of your love for each other and the fruit of your love and children and the good that you have for each other. And
And I think you think about all of the many emotions and experiences you have. Like I mentioned, middle of the night, you're tired, frustrated, where Jesus was a part of all of that, and Mary was a part of all of that. The two sinless people ever, had the frustrations, had the anguish, the anxieties. They didn't sin, They responded in a sinless manner, but they experienced all the same things, and God choosing to come down as a baby, really allows you to think that they experience those same things, because we always think God is so high above us, but by the same token, he has had all of the same experiences that we have had.
And that's, it just made me, as you were saying that, I just was flashing in my head to that scene in the Passion where Jesus is a boy and he's falling, she can see that he's going to be falling, and she just runs, to him. And and just swoops him up. And then I think I think that's a flashback from then him, having the cross and her looking at him. And again, just because she had spent all that time with him, that cross takes on a whole different meaning, for all those years of loving and knowing him. And yeah.
There's a beautiful, Von Balthasar is this theologian. He has really awesome stuff that he says. And there's one crazy part about it. He says that Jesus first recognized who he was when he looked into the eyes of his mother. Because she was reflecting perfectly the glory of God. And I think that's I think that still happens today, right? I think that's the role as parents is when we look into our children's eyes and they look into ours and we're able to see in them Christ, they start to recognize that their dignity as well and their belovedness and their how God sees them too. Which is really beautiful. I think sometimes we forget about that. Sometimes it's hard to see Jesus in you today. But to continue to look at each other in that way, even as husband and wife too, right? We recognize our dignity as well through how people look at us. I think.
Right. Yeah. And to enjoy and be present to those moments when it happens, because you're so right, when there are just these moments when she'll be really still and just look into our eyes, and it just really feels like this true connection, like she sees me and I see her, and that, happens in our marriage too with us, but it's so easy to forget about those moments or maybe not be present to them and not take the time to slow down and enjoy them just in the busyness of life and sometimes the difficulties.
Tough. Now, okay, we were talking about the first couple readings, and the, the beauty and the challenge of them sometimes. And but I do feel like, just, this idea of guide, this idea of a guide and something to help us, kind of structure and look at a lens for us to view our marriages through and our parenting through. So I thought we might break that open a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thoughts on?
Paul's letters, Colossians, and this one. There are some reading choices for Holy Family Sunday, and we went with the what was the first one from? Losing my mind now.
Sirach,
and then also from Colossians here, but also in Ephesians, Paul speaks about this, this dirty word, I call it in American culture, right? Submissive, right? Submit, and that's that's awful. Like when we hear that as Americans, we're like, no, not submitting, and my own person and things like this. But, but there's a beautiful, deep theological kind of underpinning to that if we take a moment to stop and say, what does that really mean? And I think that there's a beautiful example you guys have of kind of taking that to its real meaning and allowing God to reveal that to you. And that submit is the two words in Latin. Sub is under, and missio, under the mission of. Submission, under the mission of. So it doesn't mean to place ourselves just like in this blind slavery, obedience type of a thing, but really to place ourselves under the mission of somebody who cares for us, somebody who would want to give his life for us, which is ultimately our Lord. And then for each other in the context of a family, in the context of a marriage, extending that same love that Christ has for his church into your marriage. So tell us about your engagement and kind of how you incorporated that beautiful understanding at such a young type of age. I love that.
Yeah. So when I proposed to Emily, I proposed to her with Ephesians 5:25, and it's actually engraved into her engagement ring. And Ephesians 5:25 is along the lines of husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church, giving up himself for her sanctification. Depending on what version of the Bible you're reading, it's a little bit different, but along those lines. And
Expiation from her sins.
sum that up into die to yourself for the sake of your beloved, which is exactly what Jesus did for the church. And so I just try to emulate that, and Christ doing that for the church in the way that I seek to die to my desires, wants, needs, for Emily in our marriage and for Claire as her dad now. So yeah, I had that, and I recited it to her and proposed in front of Mary.
Wow.
So
Beautiful.
Yeah, and we had that
Special.
reading actually at our wedding. It was the second reading at our wedding, and I'm pretty sure there were a lot of people with cringy faces when they hear in that reading about wives, submit to your husbands. And like you said, it's a dirty word in American culture, but we like to think that we have a understanding that surpasses just a dictionary definition of what that means.
Yeah.
Or a broken understanding of what that means.
Yeah.
True.
I think if the only way that
Yeah.
we've ever experienced it is in an oppressive environment, then absolutely.
Right.
We would be like, well, submit. Why would you ever do that? It's only led to hurt in my life.
Right.
But really, when true submission, to place ourselves under the mission of someone, leads us to freedom and peace and, fullness of life, that's a different thing. Even Mary understood, look at that. She puts herself under the mission of the Holy Spirit. Be it done unto me according to your word.
Right.
I mean, that is a statement of submission, really, and I think to submit to each other out of love for Christ is how Ephesians 5 starts.
Right.
That's really the bedrock of it, huh?
Right.
And for each other and for under the mission of God, ultimately.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you have anybody comment to you about that reading, Drew?
My mom, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
She did. But I think mostly because she had some comments towards her. And again, it's just people not completely maybe having a broken understanding or not having a real understanding of the verse and kind of the context and the background. And people just unfortunately have that kind of idea of submit to your husbands means he's in control and you're obedient or obeying everything that he says, which is not, the meaning of that scripture. So it was actually kind of a nice moment with my mom to kind of actually have a genuine conversation about that and what it means for us. And it ended up kind of being a fruitful conversation, which I hope is kind of the point of talking about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's part of the new evangelization too, I think, is really living our lives in such a way that that shows the scriptures alive,
Right.
in the proper way, in the way God intended it, rather than using the scriptures for our own kind of benefit or to control others, right?
Right.
Submit to me because I'm in. It's like, no.
Singing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that we have to really, we can't dismiss the scriptures because we're uncomfortable with them. But we have to go deep into what they really mean and not just what somebody has made them to mean.
Right.
Over the context of, generations even,
Yeah.
It's time to heal those understandings. God wouldn't have put it in the scriptures if it couldn't mean something to us today
Yeah.
Right.
in an important way,
And there are some of those, virtues. I don't know, like when I look at Mary and, and there's a piece of her that really, that her obedience, was there's a beauty in that to me that I see, again, in the context of, of her saying yes and her, and trusting that, it was going to, God would want the best for her and that. But I just how much I wish too that I could be submissive more to God's plan, just that to act out of obedience, knowing that He has the best, and to pray with that in mind, allow me, God, to submit to the plan that you have for me, because I know you love me and care for me, and I might not be able to see what that is at the moment, but I just think there's a beauty in obedience, you know.
Yeah, and really, if the husbands are living up to the call, I mean, that's the call, really. You know, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved his church. I mean, that is the cross.
Oh, yeah.
That is the moment where God proved his love to his bride, huh?
Right.
The bridegroom to the bride. And so that moment is a big moment. And if someone's loving like that, I have no problem. I will submit
Right. Yeah.
anytime because
Yeah.
I want to be under that.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I want to be under that mission, the mission of that. Yeah, that's the beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it's the moment, and then too, to like call each other to that, you know,
Right.
like you remind each other of our calls and in our lives, and yeah, allowing God's grace and presence to come in through us. Because there's lots of moments in my own life, even as priest, as persona Christi Capitis, right? The one who is called to die as Christ and to offer my body for his people and his church every day, right? Like I'm in that exact same relationship, you know?
Yeah.
And there's days where I'm like, no, I don't want to die to myself today. You
Yeah.
know, I want to live for myself today. And,
Right.
and so it's that constant like giving ourselves up again and coming and repenting. And I think the part of the Holy Family reality is that it doesn't have to look perfect. Like, and even if it didn't look perfect, because it won't,
Right.
but we can reconcile and we can recommit ourselves to it. My spiritual director said something profound to me. He says, you didn't have to make your promises. He says, but you did.
Right.
Yeah.
And now God asks you to renew them each time, even if you fail at living them out, but to return to them, and like, I think that's so profound. Like, even if we've messed up one time and if we don't look like our families are holy, like it's never too late
Oh, yeah.
to reconcile and to bring Christ back into it. And
And I think sometimes too, we get caught up in this idea that we have to bring God into people's families, and I just to be always recognizing that God already is in the midst of, and it's just, he's in our homes, he's, and how do we just help people recognize and be aware of that and live in the peace of that. And, yeah.
Yeah.
and that there are holy families out there.
Yeah.
Not just Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, but
Yeah.
others as yourselves. And I think many of the families we've had on, not all the families I think we've had on this podcast are really striving for that.
Yeah.
Really recognizing Christ in the midst of their family and singing each other and saying, like, I really desire this for my family. And so
Yeah.
we love that. And I think that is really what's needed in the world today, is for people to look at real examples of love, which is in the family, right? I mean, that's where it's broken down, I think, so much.
And then the part about children and the obedience and all that too was that in the first reading or in the second reading? I think that's in the second reading, right? Yeah. And I liked also, because I think the last line of the second reading, I can't remember exactly what it says, but it's kind of along the line of, it's talking about, kids respect your parents, but then also parents, it says something along the lines
Don't
of
provoke your
don't break
children.
the spirit of your children, And it's so funny because my husband, that's just something he resonates with all the time, and always kind of talking about, like, and so I guess that's another piece of, like, when we are really looking at these things about obedience, are we talking about things like that together as parents? What's best for, how do we not break who they are and God's fingerprints on them and their personality, whatever that is. But I loved that part about not breaking their spirit, because there is a piece, of them that, just who they are, that we never want to sort of interfere with, because that's also who made them to be, and sometimes that's hard to accept when they're...
I recently have been giving lots of parents permission to not like their kids.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's something important to talk about on Holy Family Sunday.
Yeah.
That we don't have to always like our kids or our spouse.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But like the promise is to love them,
Yeah.
and then to still
Yeah.
make the decision to wake up and care for them and things like that. And even as a priest, that's given me a lot of freedom. it's like I don't always have to like my people, and that's okay. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's okay. I don't like you, but I still have to love you
Yeah.
because I'm your
Right.
father.
Right.
You know, and there may be kids we like more than others. That's just how it is, right?
Yeah.
You know, that resonate more with them, and maybe you're even hard on the ones who are just more like you than others. You know, I've seen lots of interesting dynamics in our families, but the reality, like, no, I choose to love you. I think that's the highest form of love.
Right.
Like the Lord said, it's easy to love those people who, you know, treat us well and things like that. But it's hard to love the ones that are difficult, the ones that keep us up, the ones that make us crazy, the ones that this kind of thing. But I think that sanctity is there in that choice every day to continue to love, even when we don't like them very much at that time, you know?
And I think that goes against all the social norms that are
Oh,
told to
totally.
us nowadays that liking is a requirement for loving. You know, they're misconstrued and they're treated as, you know, synonyms essentially, that I love you means I like you a lot, but really that's not what true love is. You know, true love and loving somebody can be totally outside of liking them, you
Or
know.
even a
It's-
feeling, you know, it's an action and
Yes.
a choice, like you
Yes,
said.
yes.
So when those maybe feelings aren't there,
Yeah.
you know, you go through seasons in your marriage and seasons in your family where maybe
yes.
those feelings of fulfillment or you make me whole and so happy aren't there at the moment,
Yeah.
but you're still choosing to love that person
Yeah.
and acting on that, making it an action.
Yeah, definitely. Well said. That's the essence of family right there. Okay.
I just think that's a beautiful freedom to invite people into, right? Like, it's okay. You don't have to like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't? You guys are like, no, you don't.
And I say that a lot in my talks with parents, because especially I said, you know, I struggled with my son during high school and college, liking him, you know, but I never stopped loving him. And I'm not kidding you. That is the first thing. I have a line of moms and dads just who want to tell me that they don't like their kids either. Okay. And they're like, how long does that last? Like, what, you know, you know, and I said, you know, but they can so relate to the piece of, but I still love them, you know, I mean, but when will I like them again? You know?
Yeah, there's some distinct holiness in that for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
And just being like, you know, no, like I think there's many times that God doesn't like me.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have to like me.
Yeah.
But his commitment to me is his love, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that is a promise we have to hold on to.
And
He's
I
never
think
gonna turn that
too,
away.
like just what you know, and that's another thing to challenge ourselves with is sometimes even with our kids, you know, we tend to stick that out, you know, we're going to make that work, you know, whatever. But just like in the marriage piece, you know, really calling ourselves to that too. You know, I think it's, you know, I don't know, like sometimes we're better to see that in our kids that we're going to keep loving you, you know, but in our marriage is the same thing, that same process happens where we go through seasons.
And the best thing that he said, the best thing that we can do for our families is to love our spouses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because they're seeing that. And that's the
Yeah.
promise to our kids, that same love is available to them
Right.
when they see that in the parents.
Yeah.
You know, and if they see the parents not doing that, then there's in their minds is that there's no love available for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big problem nowadays, is that oftentimes people view their parenthood as more important than
Yes.
being a husband or a wife. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
the kids take precedence, and really that's not the hierarchy. You know, it's you are to love your spouse first, because if you aren't loving your spouse well, then you ultimately the way you love your children is going to suffer. And like you said, they're witnessing that every day, no matter what you're telling them. If they see that you aren't honoring and respecting their other parent, whether that's the mom or the dad, that they're going to see that as what you are truly doing, as opposed to what you're doing for them.
Yeah.
You know?
And it so speaks to how you're teaching them how to be in relationship with someone else too, you know,
Right.
which is so huge, you
Yeah.
know.
The essential piece today.
Yeah, and it's just a lot to call ourselves to, you know, I mean, and that's sometimes like, "Ugh," you know, but I really agree if we can, put that primary, and that's why I hear these, even, couples still having date nights and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, yes, you know what I mean? Please, you really somehow have to keep nourishing that and checking in with each other, because it is really easy, for this little, princess to reign.
Yeah.
And it's hard to manage that, even though we've only had a baby for 5.5 months. It is a hard thing to navigate. Just, I think, for me especially, in that, Emily can survive on her own. Ultimately, to stay alive, she doesn't need me.
Yeah.
But Claire, on the other hand, she is almost fully dependent on us, to nourish her, to change her diaper, to feed her, to keep her entertained, as you can hear her wanting some entertainment right now. And so I think that's one of the challenges, is that recognizing that you still have a duty to your spouse, even though they don't ultimately need it, And I think it ultimately requires more effort.
Yeah.
Which we like to, as humans, we like to buck anything that requires more of our energy, time, money,
Do you have any examples of anything you have done or to try to keep that, texting throughout the day, whatever, I don't know.
Keep it alive.
We're still figuring it out.
Yeah.
We have gotten a few date nights in, but
Okay.
as she's getting older and it's easier to have a babysitter, I know we want to do that more often.
Yeah.
And then we do, now that she's a good sleeper through the night now. So when she goes to bed, we really do have that time, few hours when she's asleep.
Yeah.
That's just for us.
Yeah, that's
we
awesome.
try to really be present to each other
Yeah.
and talk about our day and have just time, the two of us. But I know one transition that's been hard for me too is Mass was always a time for the two of us as well, where we were really present, obviously, to our faith and to each other. And so figuring out how to still be present at Mass with her, and obviously we bring her to Mass and want to continue to bring her to Mass, how to kind of, still have that time where we're present, even though it's easy to be distracted with her. Yeah.
One thing that was just kind of crazy, I went through a season with, and just a random suggestion. Because I'm a writer, okay? So a lot of time, I just like to sit and kind of, and so I started like sending my husband letters at work.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And because sometimes too, like he would read things and hear things differently than when we were just in the midst, when you're trying, so it became a way to explain things, a way to tell him love, just different things. And also he would just be like, people just are crazy, they'd be like, your wife sent a letter again.
That's such a great idea.
Yeah,
I love
random. That was a random. So how about any traditions? Have you thought about any traditions, Christmas or anything like that in your homes? Bedtime routine?
So yeah, actually it's Patrick's favorite time with her, I think, is putting her to bed.
Okay.
Because I work part-time, so half the week I get a lot of time with her. But I know it's hard for him. He'll often say that he's just so excited to see her when he gets home. So he often does bedtime and has like a specific song that he sings to her every night. And that's
what is that
kind
song?
of his tradition.
I don't know the name, but it's a song that my dad used to sing to me. And it goes, I see the moon sees me, down through the leaves of the old oak tree. Please let the light that shines on me shine on the one I love. Over the mountains and over the sea, that's where my heart is longing to be. Please let the light that shines on me shine on my dear Claire Bear.
Oh.
So yeah,
You
that's
should
their
have seen her
tradition.
eyes.
Yes,
looking
she
at
just
his.
she just thought she was gonna have to go to bed right now.
Probably, yeah.
No, but
halftime?
she just the connection.
Yeah, it was like
Oh,
immediately, like
Yeah.
it was know the voice of the Father, you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's we've noticed that too, that she is very drawn to my voice in particular. That I'll come in, it could be a party, and I walk in the room and I say something, and immediately she just turns
That's
and
so-
zones
Lights
in on
up.
where I am.
Yeah.
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 Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
that's our bedtime tradition. And another one that we haven't had the opportunity to do, but we've talked about is I am a big fan of saint names, and I want all of our kids to be named after a saint. So she's named after St. Clare of Assisi. And we didn't have the opportunity, actually. St. Clare's feast day passed a couple
August.
months ago.
July or August.
Since she's been born, it happened, and I saw that it was her feast day, and we didn't really have the opportunity to do it, but I want to have some sort of celebration or recognition with the family when each of the kids have their patron saint's feast day,
That's
whether
fun.
that's you just
Yeah.
you have a cake, or you do
Read about
something,
them,
read
or-
about them,
Yeah.
something where
Absolutely, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
you recognize that your name is helping you in even just a small way. You're named after somebody that's in heaven, and that's helping lead you to that same end goal,
That's awesome.
Name days.
I want
they
you to
call
start
those.
that tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Name days.
Name days, yeah. That's
Okay.
what they got, and they're really beautiful.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I know. I celebrate my name day.
Yeah.
And what I'll do, cause I'm always in the saints because I'm preaching almost every day, during Mass. So we celebrate the specific ones,
Right.
And so anytime I see one come up and like I have a friend named that or something, I'll send them a text and
Oh,
happy
wow.
name day or
Yeah.
whatever, I really love that. It's an awesome thing. And yeah, it's baptized in the name Claire, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
And so it's, I think it will help them growing up know that, because a birthday, I've never been a huge fan of birthdays. I like them, but I've never been a huge person about my birthday. Some people absolutely love their birthdays, and that's great, but I've never been a huge fan of birthdays. And so I thought of that, and I'm like, I think that'd be a really good way to celebrate something related to your birth and you, but outside of yourself, pointing to a larger purpose.
Yeah.
I've
Beautiful.
Yeah, no, I encourage that.
Yeah.
And I encourage all of our families to do that too, to mark those things out and to remind each other and celebrate those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially because just, they each have these different charisms. And so to really be able to also kind of look for those in her and notice those and call those out as you see her, see those in her. And you remind me of St. Clare when you,
Yeah.
are so giving and kind and but I think we all like to me, Saint Anne, that's my middle name is Anne, and my mom too goes out of her way to call, and I have a Joseph. Saint Joseph's Day is a big deal, and but I think it's a special, if you've been named after a saint, there's a specialness in that too. So
Definitely.
Claiming it.
Yeah.
we got to start getting some of these different names. Like, my daughter's first name, Marie, her middle name, but
Okay.
but Jillian, like Saint Jillian, I need her to become a saint. So that
Remember
then
those
we
names
have a
weren't
Saint
saints before
Jillian,
they were
yeah.
saints?
Right.
That's
So
true.
you got to do that too. So
because we got some strange names out there now. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Breeze, Saint Breeze. That might, you never know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, come on, Breeze, bring it up. We need some.
My brother, he chose, never heard this, Saint Cloudald to be his confirmation name, and I think he chose that. He just tried to find
To trip up the bishop on it.
yeah, and like obscure saint that a lot of people maybe don't know, and I guess people call the Saint Cloud. So it's, at some point we'll have Saint new name,
I hope so. We need them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
I
think, yeah.
just want to say, you you have such a peaceful connection. And
Oh.
I think just so many of the things that we talked about today are a part of just how you are with each other and sitting with you. I just have felt very, very peaceful in what you have with each other. So thank you for allowing us into that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Keep it up. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming out and sharing with us your hearts and your lives and as a family, and for being a holy family example in the world. We need that so much right now. So
Thank you for having us. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
so precious. Thank you for sharing your lives with us. Let's conclude with a prayer, John Paul II's prayer for families, for all of us, all of our families, no matter where we are, how close or far away we feel from being a holy family, but that God is so much present with us in the moments. Lord God, from you every family in heaven and on earth takes its name. Father, you are love and life. Through your Son, Jesus Christ, born of woman, and the Holy Spirit, the fountain of divine charity, grant that every family on earth may become, for each successive generation, a true shrine of life and love. Grant that your grace may guide the thoughts and actions of husbands and wives for the good of their families and for all the families in the world. Grant that the young may find in the families solid support for their human dignity and for their growth in truth and in love. Grant that love, strengthened by the grace of the sacrament of marriage, may prove mightier than all the weaknesses and trials through which our families sometimes pass. Through the intercession of the Holy Family of Nazareth, grant that the Church may fruitfully carry out her worldwide mission in the family and through the family. We ask this of you, who is life, truth, and love, with the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.